So, brief introduction. It's rare to find a monastic who is the first of a tradition to set down roots in a new country, but Ayyā Mārajinā is one. Ayyā Mārajinā Bhikkhunī received Bhikkhunī ordination in 2012 at Aranya Bodhi Hermitage, California, with Venerable Tathālokā Maha Therī as preceptor. She has practiced meditation for over 15 years, initially to manage bipolar disorder, now seeing the Dhamma as the highest blessing. Dedicated to practicing and teaching the Satipatthāna and Brahmavihāras, she shares the transformative power of the Dhamma in Spanish and English. A Cuban-American, Ayya works to establish the first Theravada temple in Cuba and is involved in creating a Bhikkhunī monastery in Mexico. She translates Loku Hamuduruwo Pemasiri Thera's teachings into Spanish and leads a Sunday meditation and sutta study livestream. Her first book, Alante Pabbajja, which I mispronounced again, I think, is currently being edited. Residing in Bhava Nirodha Nilaya in Florida, she also cares for her mother. And you can find links to ways to follow Ayya and support her in establishing the Dhamma in Cuba in the description of this video, and we'll follow up on that as well. So Ayya, thank you so much for taking the time. We know it's late in that time zone, and we just appreciate it.
I'm very grateful that that you've taken notice of the project in Cuba and have invited me here today. And I just want to also say a big gratitude to my preceptor, Ayya T, who's the best and in support of the Bhikkhunī Sangha.
And Ayya Tathālokā, we also met Ayyā Mārajinā at Dhamma last year with Ayya T, and she's a good friend of Clear Mountain as well. Another thank you to Alejandro as well for helping this connection. So we'll begin with the homage to the Triple Gem. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So Ayya, the first question before we get into any specifics is, could you just tell us about your path to Buddhism and into robes?
Yes. A little story. I was in second grade in Catholic Mass with my parents beside me. My brother was in third grade, and in third grade, they choose the altar boys. So my brother was serving Mass, and I have to say that I was very inspired by the second grade reader. I had read the entire thing before, the end of the year, and very much loved the angels and the whole story, and turned over to my father and I said, next year I want to be an altar boy. And his reply was, you can't. Girls can't be altar boys. And so right then I knew there was something that wasn't right. And I think that was like the very first encounter with the church, the Catholic Church, as, not being straight up with everybody, at least with a, second grader. And so I did, as I grew up, I tried again and again to really turn myself over to the Catholic Church, including thinking of becoming a nun. But it just never really coalesced. And by coincidence, I encountered a little book called, it was in Spanish, actually. It was called A los pies del maestro, At the Feet of the Master. And it was attributed to Krishnamurti, though he denied writing it. I read that little book about 50 times at least, maybe more, for years. And it spoke about a path. but it didn't really delve into any details about this path. So in my mind, I was, searching for a path. And one night I was living in Tennessee in a beautiful farm in Tennessee, off grid, right before I went forth, actually. And I was reading Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's The Noble Eightfold Path. And the introduction to that little booklet was talks about the hard knocks of life and suffering, and he ends that first that introduction right before entering the actual discussion of the path. The first factor, samaditi. He there's this line, and it says, this is the middle way, the noble eightfold path, which gives rise to vision, gives rise to knowledge, and leads to peace, to direct knowledge, to awakening, to nibbana, and all the lights turned on, and
light arose.
Found it, and it was that was it, and it's still it, and it will always be it. So. Katanyuta to the Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, if he's around here listening to. And most of the time I talk about death brought me to the path. And after that, my aunt was diagnosed with cancer, and my favorite aunt and my favorite uncle, her husband, at the same time. And then right after that, my godmother. So I knew that it was, and I left my little farm, and I drove all the way to Aranya Bodhi.
Wow. Well, I'm sure we'll get more into your journey of Buddhism, but could you say more about your relationship with Cuba and how that actually mingles with your journey and practice in Buddhism?
Well, I'm Cuban-American, meaning I'm neither Cuban nor American. And I think I'm the only one in the family, all of my family's Cuban, that really never felt quite comfortable, always never wanting to forget my language, the mother tongue. So even though most of my family, my brother and I were born in New Jersey, but I was 40 days old when my parents picked up, and it was 1964. I'm 61 now. 64, you may remember, the U.S. and Cuba weren't talking to each other. There was a lot of tension, some missiles, talk of missiles and things like that. And they missed their families and they missed their culture. And so I was 40 days old. We boarded a ocean freight ship, and 7 days we found ourselves in Cuba. And then my parents saw most of their family was leaving, some to Spain, some to the US. And since my brother and I were born in the US, my father petitioned the US government to reclaim us. I'm not sure if these are the right words for this sort of procedure, but we were given the authority to return to the US in 1969. So I was 5 years old. And I just, I've never forgotten Cuba. I feel in a privileged situation that I easily could have grown up there. And maybe we can speak of some of the stories that our group in Cuba have told me. So I feel very honored, actually, to go back and to help out with a little bit, just a little bit to relieve them. This is the path, and it works, and I'm just sharing, giving back to who I feel is like my tribe.
And when did that start again? How long have you been going back to Cuba to instigate the project?
It's been 1 year and 1 month. March 7, 2024 was the first visit.
So on that note, Ayya, you've spoken about this continuing thread through your life of feeling called back to Cuba, and just this last year and change, you've dedicated to seeding the Dhamma there. Could you share a specific story or a moment from your travels there that profoundly illustrated to you the power and potential of sharing the Buddhist teachings in Cuba?
Yes, and there's a few, but there's one that really moved me.
A few is okay too. Yes.
The one that really moved me was just before we met. It was May 2024, and we had our first Vesak in Cuba, in Havana, in Havana, Cuba. It wasn't the very first. It was the very first with a monastic present. So they had held one on their own with no monastics. At the end of the ceremony, which was planned without my participation, they planned everything. It was really very Cuban. There was an opportunity to offer dana, and so everyone was called that had something to offer to please come up to they had arranged an altar. Please come up and leave your offering. And so there's this line. There were over 100 people in attendance, and this line just formed with candles and flowers and incense and just, little things of devotion. When I see this woman in the line with what is very Cuban staple food, black beans, a 12-ounce bag, it's about this big, of black beans. And that, I don't know what the national food is in Cuba, but, that's probably way up there as a, national staple. Well, I didn't know at the time, but I was told later that that's probably half the monthly salary of these people, because inflation was just run amok already. It's worse now. But back then, a Cuban worker will earn maybe between 3,000 and pesos, not dollars, pesos, which is the equivalent of $1 is 340 pesos right now. So this was half her salary. And, and I just wonder how many people can do that. It's not like she can go back to the store. There is no store. There's the government supplies very inexpensive food for the public, but it's just like a once a month deal. You have your quota and you get it, and that's what you receive. So this was like such an outpouring of generosity from, and I mean, all of them, even a stick of incense. How much is that? That's, for us, it's like, well, it's not that much, but for them, it was a lot. And I saw that there's this, and I continue to see it in every visit. I continue to see this generosity and this faith that it's so inspiring. It's such a blessed situation. We talk about how the monastics are supported by the laity, and we also support the laity with our teaching. We study, we practice. The goal is to realize, and so it's this mutual dependence, and I see that so clearly. It's so inspiring.
How do you account for that? I mean, there is this period of economic instability and hardship there in Cuba, and yet there is this increase in interest in Buddhism. How do those two things go together, and how might are there any lessons that we might be able to take here in America, where, at least for the moment, economically things are, well, they're not great actually, but how might what you've seen in Cuba inspire practitioners elsewhere?
Well, dukkha is a great motivator, and it's the right teaching at the right time in Cuba, that there is a lot of pain and dissatisfaction, and had a very strong, almost overpowering sense of anicca sanya, this visit. Not that it was suddenly, there. It's been developing for a long, long time. The mansions around Havana that were built in the 40s and the 50s, and a little earlier than that, I suppose, they're crumbling. They're, literally crumbling, and you have to be very careful when you walk underneath the balconies, because they'll just fall. And it was just, maybe because of where we stayed this time, such a strong sense every time I passed through those of just decay and impermanence, and you see this. It's like here in the United States, we have to look for certain things. My mother's always complaining about all the dust in her house. She's saying, like, how can it be so dusty? The windows are closed, and all this, and I'm like, well, stuff is deteriorating, Mom. Stuff is falling down. So the Blessed One's teachings are very timely in Cuba, and he didn't stop at dukkha, right? There's four noble truths, and he gives us the correct instruction. He says, well, this is suffering. We've got very little control over our lives. We have, the days and nights are relentlessly passing, but the origin is in here. We don't have to keep looking outside, praying and wishing and wanting, and it's right here. And he says there's a cure, right? Nibbana. And then he doesn't leave it in a nebulous way. It's very concrete. The Noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the end. And it's beautiful in the beginning. So we have, this instruction that's it's perfect for when there's suffering. And that's what there is. Not just in Cuba. It's actually worldwide. And even for us that are in a little bit more privileged situation, instructions still work. Dukkha's still here.
We can go more into kind of looking into the spiritual landscape of Cuba that we're stepping into here. But I actually wondered if you might share another story of either a faith that you've seen, or of people being changed and helped by the teaching now that you've gone back a few times. I find that those stories have a lot of inspiration for us here. So I don't know if another one comes to mind.
Oh, yes. Just this past visit, we had what we called the first annual Theravada Cuba celebration. It's a convocatoria. And this woman walked from a great distance, and it was in a place called well, I can't remember what the place was called now, but it was by the ocean, and so she had to walk this distance and stop at a friend's house to drink water, and then walk some more to come to this where we were going to give refuge and precepts. And she was going to have to walk back, uphill this time. And she is now an 8 preceptor. Our very first Cuban woman, 8 preceptor, with some idea of perhaps when her daughter is older to be a monastic life aspirant. So, this is for me, it's very touching and inspiring, because through this hardship, it wasn't a short distance that she walked. And then somebody mentioned afterward, she probably didn't even eat, because she left work, she picked up her child, and she walked to the hotel just to, walk back afterward. It really took my attention. And then she was present every day thereafter at our rental house. She came out between jobs. She's working 2 jobs. Wow. Between jobs, she would be there, just meditating with us and listening to our talks and interviewing with me, and then taking the 8 precepts. So, and this is not the only one. There's just a lot of people that they have faith, that they have faith and they're ready for this.
Wow, that's really impressive. Yeah, for people who don't know, the 8 precepts entail not eating after noon, not watching entertainment, not sleeping on a high bed. And for someone who has a child and has multiple jobs, that's impressive. I'm curious, you mentioned that it was at the first Cuban Theravada gathering. So that was just in the last year or two. And, I watched the video, which we shared a link to in the description, about the history of Buddhism in Cuba. So I was surprised to learn that in 1847, the first Chinese immigrants who were coming to work on the sugarcane fields brought some of their Mahayana Chinese Buddhism with them. And then, similar to America, Zen came to Cuba in the 1970s. Of course, it came a little bit earlier in America, and then Soka Gakkai and some Tibetan groups. And it's only recently that Theravada has been emerging, specifically in the lineage that you bring, as well as in a Sri Lankan lineage. And what do you feel that the Theravada, the voice that you're able to bring to the country, what do you feel like that has to add to the religious mix that's growing there?
Well, first I want to clarify that it was the first gathering for Theravada Cuba. That's the name that the group has. But this group has gone through several, or not several, maybe a couple of iterations with different names. And it's remained the same core group of about 9 or 10 members that have been through all this time. Also, I'm not the very first venerable that has gone to Cuba. Venerable Mijita received pabbajja in Cuba, in Havana in 2019, I think, or 2018. But what does Theravada bring? And, to me, the answer to that is very simply, it's basic. It's, these are the oldest existing teachings, and they haven't been, well, there is it comes through Thailand, it has come through Sri Lanka, it comes through Myanmar, and my compassion for those people. So it does have some cultural equipment with it, baggage with it, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, of course. But Theravada is also just early Buddhist teachings, and also just Theravada with the Abhidhamma alongside as well. So, it doesn't have to. It's a blank slate almost culturally, which is Cuba will take advantage of that and create. Is beautiful. I think it's just very beautiful. Create Theravada Cuba style, keeping those, the doctrine of the elders as a guide, but something will occur. And there's Zen, who I've met, one of the senseis, lovely people. It's been established for quite a longer time. And they have a good sized group. Some of their students come to the Theravada group, and some of the Theravada group go to the Zen group because it's an excellent meditation. And I highly recommend that Zen meditation for a little discipline and settling down in the body. So
I with kind of zooming out from just the specific Theravada tradition, but you talked about Cuba will make Theravada into a particular Theravada Cuba, and in terms of that dish of spirituality, Cuba's got a very unique mix, which Buddhism is coming into with the mix of communism, Catholicism,
Afro-Cuban,
Afro-Cuban, Santeria. So how do you see Buddhism particularly interacting with those elements and enriching them or being enriched by them? Like, fill us in on the dish that's being created a little bit.
Well, it's a little early to tell, but what I see is that the Cuban saints, which figure prominently in the Yoruba, which is the Santeria, and Catholicism, and figure very prominently in just the Cuban national identity. They have like a national saint. And being Cuban, my life has been steeped in these saints. And who's to say they're not bodhisattvas? I had the honor of meeting some of Alejandro's family when we were there in November. And his grandfather has been bedridden for about 10 years. And his mom asked me to speak with his grandfather. And so, I was trying to give him some coping mechanisms for being, 10 years is a long time to be totally dependent on his daughters and losing his independence. And I look over and there is San Lázaro, San Lázaro is the saint that is on crutches and he's got wounds on him. And he is the saint that people pray to when they're in pain or suffering or ill, to please take these from me. And that's why he's covered in wounds and things and on crutches. And, we don't have to go that far. We just need that release, let go. And so I was saying, just, give it to San Lázaro, meaning just let go of all of these worries and concerns and sadness that you have. So, I see this as the direction that it's going to go, but hopefully with the proper instruction to just, to remain, rather than praying to a deity for salvation, to just hand over.
Mm-hmm. Kind of in that same vein, we've talked with some of our monk friends, Ajahn Mudito in Brazil, Ajahn Bhante Rahula in Mexico, and they talk about just how the Catholic culture really it's very easy for people to pick up faith in Buddhism. It's just they transfer, faith in Catholicism in towards the Bible and towards God, and then transfer it towards a new Buddhist faith, and also so not just the religion, but also even the language. So Ajahn Mudito talks about how Portuguese it's easier, somewhat like Northeast Thai. It's easier to speak very directly, and I think Spanish maybe has somewhat of the same flavor. is there any aspect of either the Catholicism or historic Catholicism of Cuba and Spanish language that you feel like is brought out in the Buddhism in Cuba that you're experiencing that might be a good influence on Buddhism in America?
Well, I can definitely say that sati is still a quandary in terms of figuring out what word to use.
Yeah, what do you do? How do you translate that? Usually
Well,
mindfulness in English. So
yeah, and there's no translation for mindfulness, and the ones that are the most frequent are use the word attention, which is a different mental factor, or consciousness. So what I've been doing is translating it as presence, as pure presence, which is aids in, being there, present in the present, which aids in memory, which is, because for me, sati just goes kind of like from basic attention, which we share with insects even, to yoniso manasikara, which is wise or careful attention, which I translate as careful attention into Spanish, to sati. And this is, it's kind of fun in a way, because translation kind of really, you delve into these teachings so much more from so many different, looking for words and for in language. So it's very challenging, and at the same time, it's time consuming.
And the word faith itself, fe, do you just use fe? I mean, Bhante Rahula was saying that that's complicated in Mexico because it's basically Catholic faith, Christian faith.
Yes. I haven't had that issue in Cuba. I use fe. I think that with sada, it probably has a wider range of meaning, because sada continues even after, say, the first attainments. Is you don't really need faith. Faith is like when you don't see something, but once you see it, there's still sada. So it's possibly something a little wider in range than just faith. But one of the words that was a little bit more difficult was chitta, because, and I think this will be true for the U.S. as well, for the West, is that we have this mind and heart dichotomy, and I've had people upset that I use heart instead of mind.
Corazón. Corazón, or
Corazón, or mente. And chitta is, kind of both, either or, perhaps depending on something that I haven't encountered yet. But I usually use corazón, and some people would just tone out because they think that's the emotive, that's the emotional thing. But what I would suggest for everyone is to take up either Pali or take up a different language and try your best at delving into these words, because it's such a practice. It's an enriching practice.
So I want to make sure we have more time to delve into actual Dhamma questions, and we might go over our 6:45 end time. So people can also type in questions to the chat. Before we do that, though, one final kind of important question is, what is your vision for a community in Cuba, and how can people support it?
Well, the vision is like a really long-range, distant vision at the moment. What we're looking at is, what we're wishing for is a small farm that has fruit trees and has space for gardening. And also, I mean, just the sustainability of that there will be, and we already have an 8 preceptor that will be there to care. You know, we don't have place, but we have people. So something's very sustainable, and also with the fourfold Sangha. And I don't mean that in a sense of mixing. I would like to keep them, well, I mean, I think it would be good to keep these separate, but for convenience, that the laity can come to one place and offer. And you know that, and there's an aspect of danger also that never was before in Cuba for women. Right now, it has become a dangerous country. This is very new. 5 years ago, there wasn't anything. Women could walk very safely, but that's changed. So having a fourfold Sangha in that same vicinity, you know, we're talking about maybe 2 or 3 acres. I don't see that much more, but fruit trees, gardening space, you can grow rice, you know. The laity could help with the rice and the fruits and vegetables, and have everything there, plus a well, because you may know we have rolling blackouts in Cuba. Food spoils. It takes 4 hours for the turbines to start pumping water again, so that, you know, they prime and start pumping water out. So the water scarcity is an issue. So what I think would be good for Theravada Cuba is to have a small community, small fourfold community that's semi self-sustainable, and close enough that people can meditate, you know, come in the evenings and meditate, but not too close to Havana because it's very expensive.
And we'll be posting links in the chat of ways you can support Ayya in this project, and just really want to encourage people to take advantage of this opportunity to connect with her. And yeah, we're really rooting for you, Ayya. So
yeah, sadhu. So we will have time for maybe a couple questions, but this first one, dear Venerable Ayyā Mārajinā, respectful greetings and muchas gracias. Please, can you speak to how your mom felt about your practice and what it has been like for her and you to become ordained? And you're currently staying with her, I think, helping her out in certain ways there in Florida. So,
yes, my mom lives in a cottage in the back, and I'm her caregiver. She's not totally reliant on me at the moment. But this is a good question, because I did ask my mother for permission to ordain, and she gave me her permission, but I think she never thought that I would actually ordain. And when I did, she stopped talking to me. And there was a lot of confusion and maybe not niceness for a long, long time, for many years. But now she sees it differently, because she has seen changes in me. She has seen the improvement in our relationship. We had a typical mother-daughter relationship. Not always, you know, seeing eye to eye on a lot of things. And that's just totally all gone. It took a lot of work, and I really wanted it to work. I really, you know, I put in effort to make that work. And I think it's possible with any Cuban parent, even if they do react, you know, with silence and ill will at the very beginning. You know, it's come around.
Did you say human or Cuban?
Cuban.
Okay.
Let's hope for human too.
Yeah.
Human too.
Human too. Okay.
Ayya, we're being joined by Ayya Tathālokā. So Ayya, Thank you for joining us. We're still waiting for a few more questions, so people can type those in. But one I had was actually, so let me get rid of this. Sorry. As a bhikkhuni, currently there aren't too many monasteries where one can settle down in a stable bhikkhuni life in a larger community in the West, and it takes a certain amount of fortitude and perhaps other qualities to remain in robes when you're having to kind of create or help found the different communities that you're living in. Would you speak to what have you found has been sustaining? What advice would you give to another woman interested in ordaining as a bhikkhuni for how to remain in robes?
Wow. I think, through the years and through my hardships, which were many, what I have found is that a preceptor's compassion is essential, and family support for women, for a woman, family support, and I don't know if this is controversial. It could be, but I think while bhikkhuni monasteries are still kind of up and coming, and there's not that many of them, I think that if a family is willing, that somebody, one of their daughters or sisters or ex-wives, can have a kuti and and be there. I learned very recently that Sanghamita Arahanti was living in proximity with her mother when she was called on to go to Sri Lanka. And, having that sort of support for the four requisites, especially medical and just your basic food of the day is so important, and it can be hard. So having support, really scoping it out and practice, study, practice. Don't wait until you enter the monastery, because I've heard it's a pressure cooker, and not the peaceful, blissful feeling that one might expect. So practice and be ready for that, and have your support system in place.
Thank you, Ayya. We have one final question before we go to Zoom, and then people can continue to ask on Zoom as well. Dear Venerable Ayyā Mārajinā, after inviting a Catholic neighbor to a mindfulness class, she replied, "I don't need that. We have prayer for that." How would you suggest responding if I hear that again?
Well, in November, we went to visit the Barefoot Carmelite nuns. It's a cloistered order. And I was very interested because they do some sort of Brahmavihāra meditation, but they call it prayer. And Christian mystics, Saint Teresa of Avila, were seekers of the Brahmavihāras. They have, I think, 6, and I can't recall all of them, but they have the 4 that the Buddha taught. And they have a couple more. So they're also, they do call it prayer, but it's a meditation. And so what I have found when speaking with the Carmelite nuns, which they were just such a wonderful group of nuns, and such a good opportunity to speak with them, that we can find common ground. We don't, necessarily even need a prepared reply, just a kind of an open curiosity, and mindfulness maybe is not their thing. Maybe metta could be, and bring in the Christian mystics and that tradition to find common ground.
Well, Ayya, thank you very much. Ayya Mārajinā, that means the vanquisher of Mara. So beautiful name. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll go on to Zoom right now. And did we post we posted the link in the chat. So people can just click there and meet us over there for more conversation. And just thank you very much for joining us, Ayya. And hopefully see you somewhere in not too long.
Okay.
Visit us. That
Yeah.
would be great.
In Zoom sooner than that. So
Soon. Okay.